So I want to specifically talk about reprints in this video and give my just thoughts about it because I feel like reprints are talked about so much and I feel like there is a misunderstanding with reprints, and I do understand where some people's mindset comes from and their thought processes with reprints and how people just take reprints the wrong way. And I guess that's what I want to talk about. I've talked about this topic I think earlier today when I talked about the bull market. I did touch on it, but I specifically wanted to make a video today just talking about reprints and how I feel like a lot of people see reprints the wrong way. And I do understand where the perspective comes from, but I do really think reprints this time around is a little bit different than what people have seen it in the past. So that's what I want to talk about. So I want to talk about Sword and Shield because this is where this whole idea of reprints, I guess has come from, where prices automatically crash. Like, people, when you hear reprints, right, automatically people think about prices crashing because that's sort of what happened in Sword and Shield. And it's sort of understandable people making comparisons to Sword and Shield because, early in Sword and Shield, there was a lot of hype. It was in a bull market, sort of like we're in now. I've said this many times before, though. I do feel like how things came to be and all this hype was very different. Like Sword and Shield, why did it happen? The whole virus thing. Now, it's not because of a virus, it's because of just Pokemon, right? So I do feel like that's a little bit different, and that's a big, it is a big difference in my opinion of those two, because I feel like 2021, it was sort of like obvious that it was gonna end in like that. It was like a bubble. Like, I think it was sort of obvious of how things came to be. Versus now, it's a little bit different because there's not like a virus, or whatever, impacting Pokemon and why it's being inflated. Like, that's not the reason why. But I've talked about that many times before. But I just want to specifically talk about reprints, so I don't want to get too off topic. So, going back to Sword and Shield reprints, this is where the idea comes from that reprints equals price crashes, because it did sort of happen. Vivid Voltage, for example, got super expensive, then it got reprinted and it crashed pretty heavily. Chilling Rain, same thing. It didn't go super high, but they did reprint it and it went all the way down to the 80s. Fusion Strike, same thing, it went down to the 80s. Lost Origin got printed, went down from like 180 to like 120s. Silver Tempest went down from like 160s, I believe, to like around like the very low hundreds. Shining Fates got printed into the Absolute Ground 2. You could pick these up before for sub $40. Crown Zenith got reprinted a ton. You could buy these really easily for around like $40. And I know that sounds crazy now, but it was very available for a very long time. So you see all these sets, and there's a lot of sets that got reprinted from Sword and Shield into the ground. So people are making this comparison with Sword and Shield to Scarlet and Violet, and how this is going to be the exact same scenario where Sword and Shield, bunch of reprints, price crashes, right? And then they're taking that and looking at Scarlet and Violet, being like, okay, we're in this bull market, the same exact thing is going to happen. But is it going to happen? Is history going to repeat itself, or is this time a little bit different? Now, I've given my perspective on reprints and stuff in Scarlet and Violet, and how I truly believe reprints and this whole like word means something different in this era. So far in Scarlet and Violet, there has been no massive reprints. And I do understand, though, that Scarlet and Violet didn't start off very strong like Sword and Shield did. Like, Sword and Shield, the beginning of Sword and Shield, was like the time the bull market started. But this time around for Scarlet and Violet, this bull market sort of started in the middle to end. So it's a little bit different that way. So it is very possible, maybe, reprints and these huge things that Pokemon's going to do and print everything to the ground, maybe they are being delayed. Maybe Pokemon is going to do that. But so far, I feel like Pokemon has changed their mind about how they want to do things and how they want to reprint things, because we've seen zero evidence of reprints. And I feel like there has been enough products that have gone up in value in the past, like 151, for example, where it's gotten very expensive. And I feel like by now, Pokemon could have reprinted products like 151 into the ground, but they really haven't. And I guess that's what I'm going to talk about when I get to 151 up here. But just so far, we haven't seen this whole big reprint thing that everybody is talking about. And I really feel like Pokemon has decided to change their mind on how they reprint things, because they saw Sword and Shield. They saw, the market pretty much just tanking after reprinting all these products. And it was also, I guess, in a bad time too, because Pokemon did print things when things started to cool off with Sword and Shield. And that's why prices were pretty low at one point. So I guess that's another thing. But with just Scarlet and Violet in general, we just haven't seen, like, the reprints we have seen, they've been pretty small. And I feel like Pokemon at this point doesn't want to go back to like the Sword and Shield reprints, because why would they? Why would they print so much to the point where prices go down to 90 to $100? Why would they do that? Especially now they've increased MSRP. Why would they do that to themselves? It doesn't make a lot of sense business wise. And look at how Pokemon's doing right now, even with these prices. I know there's a lot of people complaining about these high prices, but generally, look at the Pokemon market. It's doing extremely well. Now, I'm not saying this is a healthy market. I'm not saying that this is how things should be, but you can't really deny that this sort of scarcity right now that is happening, it's gained a lot of traction for Pokemon. Like it has, it's just facts, right? And I feel like Pokemon, if they were to really, go back to their Sword and Shield ways and print a lot of these sets into the absolute ground, I feel like the market would dip a lot. Now, some people might be happy. Some people be like, you know what, I'm happy, I want cheap cards and stuff. Okay, but for the general hobby and, the strength of Pokemon, it would really dip a lot. If Pokemon really printed everything into the ground, Pokemon would see some extreme pullback and we would go into another dormant market. And I don't think Pokemon wants to do that. Why would they? It's not, how is that good for them? Do you want your brand to be known as, a brand where they print everything into the ground? Like, look at other card games we've seen that's happened to. When is that good, right? I think a lot of people don't understand that this is like a collectible thing. Like people just see this as, a children's card game. It should be cheap. But I mean, it's really not that way. Pokemon is really a collectible, whether you want to believe it or not. And a lot of people will disagree, like the collecting people that want cards to be like a few bucks each. This is a collectible, and collectibles need to have value. And I think Pokemon sort of has understood that, and I feel like they have learned their lesson with Sword and Shield when they printed a lot of things in the ground and things were super cheap for so long. And I feel like this time around, just what we've been seeing, it's a little bit different. And with this demand too, I feel like whatever reprints they are going to do, it's going to get bought up a lot quicker than Sword and Shield. Because like I said, Sword and Shield, when they did reprint a lot of things, it was towards the end of the bull market. And that's why there was so much product available and why everything was so cheap. But Scarlet and Violet, we are in the middle to end of it now. I mean, the demand's super high. We haven't seen any big reprints. I don't see what could possibly happen with, Scarlet and Violet where prices crash like everyone thinks it's going to happen. And I'm not here to try to say that reprints won't happen, because they are going to happen. I don't think Pokemon's not going to reprint anything. That's not what I'm saying here. But I feel like they're just not going to print to the ground. And I feel like that concept for some people is hard to sort of understand. It's like people automatically think of reprints printing into the ground, but it doesn't have to be that way. Paldea Evolved, for example, because I've been sitting on this whole screen. I guess I'll just get to my point and talk about some of these sets. Paldea Evolved got reprinted. Did it get printed into the ground? No. But it went from 140 to 130 and then jumped back up to 140. There was a small little reprint. Honestly, it probably could have been more than what they did, but they decided to just do a small one. Why? Probably because they didn't want to crash the price. Obsidian Flame, same thing. It got reprinted. Why wasn't it big? Why was it minuscule? Maybe because they don't want to crash the prices of the booster boxes. 151. 151 has gotten, I don't know if it's exactly reprints, restocks, but this has showed up at retail at a lot of places, like Target, Walmart, GameStop, in the past few months. Has prices crashed because of it? No, but there's been a lot of, restocks. I don't know exactly if they're reprints, but there has been a lot of products showing up at retail. Now, Surging Sparks I want to talk to here. I don't know why I have booster boxes up, but I want to talk about booster bundles because GameStop and some of these other places, I think, was it GameStop or it's Best Buy, I think, they're having these booster bundles. I don't know if this is part of the Surging Sparks reprint or not, but look at the prices. Like, I think, this is a perfect indication. Like, I don't know if this is the reprint, right? But prices have dipped, right? They've gotten restocks, reprints, whatever it is with, retailers, and it's dipped from 44 or 45 to now 38. Is that an extreme drop? No. This is kind of how I feel like reprints are going to be for, these products. And for the better products or more popular products like Prismatic and maybe the future sets, I feel like reprints will probably do almost nothing. But, like, this is an example of what I think a reprint would look like in this, era. For booster boxes, whatever they reprint, I feel like these are the sort of drops we're going to see. Maybe 10%, 15% drops. We're not going to see absolute crashes like some people think. Like, for example, when Prismatic Evolutions gets reprinted, because it's going to, I'm not denying that, but when it gets reprinted, I really don't think we're going to see crazy price crashes like some people are speculating, like things going back to MSRP. And especially when you take into account with distribution, upcharging when things get reprinted to stores and stuff, it is almost impossible because stores will not be able to sell lower than the price they're paying for, because then they wouldn't make any money. So if Prismatic Evolutions ETBs get reprinted, let's say it's at 150, the distributors might be charging 100, 110, 120. How is it going to go back down to $60? It really can't happen. And with even all these other reprints, I'm pretty sure the Surging Sparks reprint, I'm pretty sure the distributors are going to be marking up as well. So it's like the floor for how much things can go down, it's not like MSRP like you think it is, because they're not paying, these stores aren't paying the same wholesale price they paid on the release of these sets. They're just not, because these distributors have the power to mark things up. And why wouldn't they mark things up if they can sell them regardless, because all these stores are buying it up. So I just feel like there's so many things in this era just speaks of just price crashes not happening, and this whole kind of thought process and thinking with reprints that everything's going to crash. I feel like this thinking is a little bit flawed, but I do understand where people get this idea from because of Sword and Shield. But when you look at all these factors with Scarlet and Violet, things are very different this time around with reprints. It seems we haven't seen any big reprints. 151, where are the big reprints at? It's super expensive. Why doesn't Pokemon print that set into the ground? It should get printed in the ground, right? Because Elite Trainer boxes are $200. It's only a year and a half old. It brought a lot of people back into Pokemon. Why wouldn't they reprint 151 into the ground, right? And we see the other sets that got reprinted, like booster boxes, like Paldea Evolved, Obsidian. Why were those reprints small? Why is Pokemon not printing everything into the ground so far in Scarlet and Violet? I think their business plan and everything has changed. I'm not saying they're not going to reprint anything, but they're not going to do it to the extent where the secondary market crashes, because I feel like Pokemon is smart. I don't think they're dumb, and they're one of those people that's just thinking that, oh yeah, everything should just be cheap. Because at the end of the day, Pokemon is a business, and I feel like when they look at this time around in this market, and they look at the time in Sword and Shield when they printed everything into the ground, I feel like if they did do exactly what they did in Sword and Shield, I feel like they really wouldn't be smart, because this market right now, I feel like is stronger than back then. And I feel like Pokemon can do things right by reprinting things in sufficient amounts to not make prices absolutely crash, but maybe see small dips, maybe 10-15% dips to add more supply to the market without absolutely crashing things. Because I think Pokemon does know a big portion of their market cares about value, and that's part of collectibles. And I think a lot of people still have a hard time understanding that, but I feel like Pokemon knows that, and they're a business. I don't think they want to tarnish their brand as a company that reprints everything into the ground. I feel like that's not really good for their image, but that's just my opinion. Maybe you guys think differently. Maybe you think things should be printed in the ground and this is just a children's game and everything should be cheap. If you think that way, you can have your own opinion, but I feel like as a business standpoint in a brand, why would you do that to yourself? You're making a lot of money right now with how this market is. You're able to sell stuff at MSRP. Look at Pokemon Center. Pokemon Center, obviously I would say they probably should, have more products on there and maybe print more, because there is actually none available really on Pokemon Center. But they're getting a lot of sales from directly, and obviously they're going to make more money that way selling at MSRP and directly from them. There's no middleman. So why would they want to do this whole big reprint thing? Is it more profitable to print things into the ground, or is it more profitable to, have these small reprints, make more money, and keep your brand going in every single set, selling out and doing all these things? I feel like it's good for business. But a lot of these people are not coming from the business mindset. A lot of these people come from the mindset of being a collector and wanting everything cheap. And that's where I feel like, I guess the difference is, and I guess the disconnect is with, I guess collectors and just value and just Pokemon's mindset in general, because I think people really don't think about Pokemon as a business. Like, people just think about Pokemon as a children's card game, but you got to remember, this is a billion-dollar company. They're here to make money. Pokemon isn't just here to just cater towards only kids and cheap cards. That sort of market isn't profitable. When, booster boxes, when all these products were like $50-$60 under MSRP, when Sword and Shield booster boxes hit $80, MSRP is $143. That's not profitable. That's not good. So I think I've done enough rambling. I've just talked about so much stuff, but I'm coming from the business mindset that a lot of people aren't coming from. and people not understanding this time around that reprints, at least in my opinion, probably are not going to be like what they were in Sword and Shield, and they're not going to get printed into the absolute ground like everybody thinks it's going to, and some people really want that to happen. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about this whole thing. Maybe Pokemon does really just cater towards kids and they don't care about value and they're going to print everything to the ground. Maybe. But I feel like it's more likely than not that Pokemon isn't going to do that. But hey, like I said, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just here yapping about this. I know nothing. This is my belief and just how I see it and how I see things from a business perspective. So yeah, that's all I have to say about reprints. Let me know what you think. Do you think Pokemon is going to repeat history, print everything into the absolute ground? Or do you think it's different this time? Do you think Scarlet and Violet is where things change with reprints, where they don't reprint things in the ground? Let me know down in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.